Okay, so because retopology can be very monotonous and mundane, it still has its little issues, even though it is slightly easy to work through this process. One thing that I mentioned in the last video was sometimes you can't move these particular points around, and when that happens, like for instance, let's try to move this one around. This one actually moves. Well, what you do in the process to try to move to the next point, or you don't want to work on a certain point, you clear out by holding the command and you move on to the next one. That's how you clear it out and you start on a new point. For instance, if I wanted to go from here to here, and I'm going to show you another thing that happens sometimes, and we get frustrated when we work through some of these programs because we don't always think about everything that we do. A lot of times it's memory based, but for instance, I want to put a point here to point here, and it's moving it. That's not what we want to do. You totally forgot that we need to be in draw mode as opposed to move mode. And this is something that simple happens, you know, it simply happens whenever you're working through topology. You just forget certain buttons are on and you move through it. I know I make this mistake quite often, and in order to completely move on and talk about how to deal with a moving issue, and these are actually very important lessons because that you come across them all the time and you wonder why certain things aren't working. Well, most of the time it's something simple as, you know, clearing the mask. That way you can actually move these particular points. And that's it for this part of the tutorial. I just want to kind of walk you through the basic concept of doing this. Now, one other thing, you always want to try to save your Z tool out, because if you ever come across problems where you have a lot of like double lines or extra polygons that don't need to be there, you can always come back and start over, and it's always good to have backups always. And to move on, like I was saying before, you can't actually move in and out and check out your actual topology to see what it looks like. Something new to ZBrush 4.0 is the fact that the lines are actually grayed out when you look from the other side. Well, you can still actually connect to them, so you have to be careful. Sometimes you have to turn your model to the side in order to create one. For instance, we're going to frame this again and scale out a little bit. And always try to hold the hotkeys down, like Alt, whenever you're moving and pulling and dragging and scaling, because it'll just pop back into place. Little things like that can be very pesky, but you kind of get the idea that there are minor issues that sometimes we don't recall, you know, what we did, and then we think something else is happening. So, but like for instance here, I've actually created a point where it's not even connected to the other point. You want to make sure that you hit Command Z to back up on that note, clear out, hold the command, drag out in the spot, and try to get back into where you were. Make sure everything is right. Move on to the next one. We'll create one up here. And as before, you know, you can follow these lines, which would probably be better for a particular model that you really want to do a good job on. But it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference in this case because this is just a tutorial. So, and keep in mind I did add the symmetry button with the X so that I can work on both sides at once to move this process along a lot faster. But you can check into the rest of the tutorials. I'm going to move on in this process and try to finish out the retopology. Definitely take note of all of this.